والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله العلي الكريم والصلاة والسلام على نبي الجهاد وقائد العباد نبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان به إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقل ربي زدني علما. وعن معاوية رضي الله تعالى عنه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول يا أيها الناس إنما العلم بالتعلم وإنما الفقه بالتفقه ومن يرد الله به خير يفقهه في الدين وإنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. رواه الطبراني. Respectful honorable friends, ulama kiram, mothers and sisters, I would like you all to go back into time and ponder with regards one individual. An individual who was born and bred in the deserts of Arabia. Such an individual, dear friends, who was not granted the opportunity of studying in any madrassa or any school. Such an individual, dear friends, who whilst he was young was brought up herding flocks. He grew up as a shepherd, and then during his middle age he grew up helping his uncle doing businesses, and he would travel from Mecca to Syria as a businessman. This one individual, dear friends, who didn't graduate from any madrassa as an alim, qari or mufti, or from any university with any PhDs or any other diplomas. But this simple individual, who we all know as being illiterate, he was ummi, illiterate, who hadn't had any form of education at all. But this one individual, dear friends, created such a change in the universe that today we find small children, hardly the age of 7, 8, who stood up in front of us today, recited the Quran, dear friends, in such beautiful form. Many of us may have just heard the qira'at that took place, the nazams, and overlooked it. Well, the small kids, they must have practiced and they got up in front of the mic and they started reading. What's the big deal behind it? Dear friends, on a Saturday night, for any child to stand in front of the mic and recite the Quran Kareem in such beautiful perfection way is a great miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which you and I do not appreciate. Where other kids will be rehearsing for some pantomime, rehearsing some nursery rhymes, these same children of ours, dear friends, who are not in any other era, the same era as other children, who go to the same school as other children, but with such great perfection, dear friends, they recited the Quran to us. All this is due to the barakat of this one person who lived many years ago in the deserts of Arabia. Dear friends, in many of my talks, I like to mention with regards to history, how Arabia was prior to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And why? Because many times when we are addressed with regards to issues of deen, many people think that, look, to speak to us with regards to today's affairs. Those were bygone days, those days were different. Why? Because we only know the condition of the Sahaba after Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and when we look at their lifestyle, then we think that it is something that we cannot match. However, what we don't realize is that why do we not ponder with regards to the lives of the same individuals prior to Nabuwwat? And when a person reflects over the society prior to Nabuwwat, and if we have to analyze it with the society that we are living in today, dear friends, we won't say that those were bygone days. We will find great similarities between today's society and the society prior to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam. To that extent also, there may be a case wherein that society was worse than the society that we are in today. We all know how evil and corrupt the society is in today. But we must also realize that prior to Nabuwwat, the society of the Sahaba wasn't as it was after Nabuwwat. They were just as evil and corrupt and immoral as the people are today. This is a great miracle of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that he was sent to such type of people. Otherwise, if he was sent to a civilized community, people who are already educated, then there wouldn't have been any great achievement in the Nabuwwat of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala deliberately sent him at such a time when there was no such thing as morals, as character, and no such things as a ta'aleem and tarbiyah. There was no conduct at all, there was no law and order. But in a very short period of time, the same era which was known as Ayyam al-Jahiliyyah, the days of ignorance, became known as Khairul Qurun, the best of eras. The same type of people, not that the entire generation passed by and a new generation came, but the same people in the same area, in the same time, which were known as the people of ignorance, the people of Ayyam al-Jahiliyyah, the same people then became the Khairul Qurun, the best of eras. And how did this come about, dear friends? This came about due to one specific revelation. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, prior to Nabuwwat, it was his habit that he would go into the cave of Hira, where he would just go and meditate on the oneness of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. He wasn't made a Nabi as yet. He would just go there, take some meals for a few days, and he would stay there for a few days, meditate on the oneness of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. When he would think there's a need to go home, he would go home, see to the affairs of the house, and he would return back to the Mount of Hira. It was whilst he was in this Mount of Hira, on one occasion Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came to him. Now we may have all heard this incident, but there's one specific point which I really want to mention with regards to this incident. Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and said to him, Iqra, read. Who is he asking to read? Somebody who, dear friends, who has never been to school at all. He was never educated, he did not know how to read. After all, the Quran was revealed afterwards. The Quran was in Arabic, which was his mother tongue, but he had never learned his mother tongue where he could read. But Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam said to him to read. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied to him, Ma ana biqarin, as you know, I am not literate, I cannot read. Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam then grabbed hold of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and tightly squeezed him. Hatta balaghani min al-jud, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, to that extent that I felt some pain when he squeezed me. And then for a second time, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam said to him, Iqra, read. Again Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Ma ana biqarin, I cannot read. And again he embraced him tightly. For the third time again he said to him, read. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied that, Ma ana biqarin, I cannot read. And again for the third time he squeezed him. And then all of a sudden from the tongue of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the verse of the Quran, Iqra bismi, came from his tongue. This, as we all know, is the first revelation of the Quran. But have we ever pondered what was the first word that was revealed to Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? If it was you and I, and if you were to think that what would be the most appropriate word to come out, we would have probably thought that Allah would reveal the word usjud, prostrate, or would worship. This is what we would have thought, that the first revelation should have been, after all Allah Ta'ala is going to make him a Nabi, that the first revelation should have been when Nabi Kareem would be told to go and fall into sajda, do ruku, do ibadat. Something linked directly with the words of ibadat. But no, the words reveal the Iqra, read. But why reading? So this itself, dear friends, is the fact that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala revealed the word Iqra. From that day onwards, dear friends, we find a great transformation came about the people of Arabia. Why? Because one thing that the people of Arabia lacked is that they were illiterate, they didn't have knowledge of what is right and wrong. Further, in the same revelation, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala mentions that allama al-insana bil-qalam, that He taught mankind by means of the pen. Meaning that the pen is a means of knowledge. What did He teach them? Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. He taught mankind that which he did not know. He taught mankind that which they did not know. Dear friends, we always speak the word knowledge. Translation of ilm is knowledge. But what does knowledge really mean? The word knowledge, the noun knowledge, is derived from the verb to know, which means only that can be called knowledge, where a person knows exactly what it is. If a person does not know what it really is, then that is just experience, or it is trial and error. We won't call that, and we won't define that to be knowledge. Knowledge is only that which a person knows for sure. What are the means of knowledge? Our eyes and our hearing, these are means towards knowledge. A person gains knowledge by means of his sight and by means of his hearing. But we find that even in these two aspects, a person fails greatly. During the day when the sun is bright shining, if a person looks at his palm, if he looks at it from one side, he can't see the other side. So his eyes fail him to see what is behind his palm, which is so close to him, but he doesn't have the knowledge to see what is behind him. Ears also, with regard hearing, many times you find that so much misunderstandings come about. Why? Because somebody didn't listen properly. So with regards hearing also, we find great deficiency. These two methods of knowledge, we find great deficiency in it. In the same way, dear friends, we find that there are so many other things which we call knowledge. But in reality, they do not deserve to be called knowledge at all. Because knowledge is only that thing which is definite. Something which is not definite, we do not regard that, and we cannot term that to be knowledge. And we find that in many other sciences which we call knowledge, this in reality is just trial and error, it is not knowledge at all. For example, we have so many researchers nowadays that refute past researches. Where previously people would say a certain drug, a certain medication is beneficial for a person, and they would say this is our knowledge that this is good for a person. For example, aspirin. Years ago it was told to us that this is very good for any problem you have, headache, backache, any form of pains you have, take an aspirin. Years later we find that it's banned in countries. Why? Because it affects a person's heart. So the knowledge which was then has been refuted later on. So we can't regard this to be knowledge because it isn't something that is definite. It is just trial and error. In the same way, dear friends, in 1956, in China, they had an epidemic wherein the crops were growing very weak. So all the researchers in the universities started making research with regards what is the cause of this. They spent a lot of money on it. And finally, they came to the conclusion that our knowledge tells us that is due to a specific bird that flies above the fields and they are eating on the crops, due to which the crops are growing so weak. So the government then put up various stalls around the fields and they start paying the people that whoever shoots down these birds, whoever comes with one bird, they'll get 10 pence, 20 pence, and so on. Until when they became very rare, they increased the price to probably £1 a bird. Eventually, all these birds became absolutely extinct. They weren't available at all. You couldn't find them at all. But then not long after, they found that the crops were still growing weak. So now what was the cause of it? Now again they started making the research and they found out that it wasn't the birds, but in reality it was actually a worm that was eating the crops, and these birds would actually feed on these worms. So now what happened is all the research went into reverse gear. Forwards became backwards. Now they started putting up stalls telling the people that whoever breeds these birds, we will pay them for that. As soon as people started breeding, when there were still very few, the price was higher, and then when everybody started breeding them very frequently and easily, the price started dropping. And eventually the matter was solved. So this, dear friends, we can't call this knowledge, because it isn't definite. It is just trial and error. So these type of things, dear friends, we cannot call knowledge. In the same way, Darwin's theory of evolution, which he mentioned centuries ago, but till now also you find that wherever any fossil is found, millions and millions of dollars and pounds is spent in research on it just to prove his theory. Which means it shows us itself that the people today also are not satisfied in his theory, that they still feel the need that we still need to prove his theory. The theory of evolution, which, dear friends, if you don't know what it means, that man originated from apes. On this theory, dear friends, so many people graduate with great PhDs from big universities on the theory of Darwin. One occasion somebody asked Hakim al-Mathani rahimahullah that give an answer to Darwin. Darwin claims that man originated from apes. So can you give an answer towards it, give a jawab for it? Now the people were anticipating that he would give a really good answer, which well he did do in actual fact, where he would come out with some very good evidence from the Quran, etc. Hakim al-Mathani mentioned that look, every person has the rights to say who his grandfather is. So, if Darwin is proud to say that his grandfather was an ape or a baboon, then that's fair enough to him. He has the right of saying that. We say that our grandfather was Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. We are proud of this fact and we'll create our lineage with Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. And if he is so good, if he feels good and happy in the fact that his grandfather was a baboon, then fair enough, let him say that. We don't need to give him any answers. So Darwin's theory, this is self-different, isn't just a theory. It isn't knowledge at all. What is knowledge then? If all these things, dear friends, are not knowledge, then knowledge, what is knowledge? Knowledge, dear friends, is that thing which is absolute and which is definite. Knowledge which is absolute and definite is only the knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith. Because, dear friends, today we don't find that anybody is there trying to prove something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran or something that Nabi Kareem mentioned. We don't need to prove anything there. It is just there, rather we just quote it and give the references from it. Why? Because this knowledge, dear friends, is absolute and definite. It's not going to change. We're not next year or this year, we're not going to come out with a new edition of the Quran, the latest version of the Quran. The Quran was there 1500 years ago and not even a slightest changes occurred in the Quran. We're not going to find any new additions at all. To that extent, even the Bible itself is not absolute because it keeps on changing. Whereas the Quran and the Hadith, dear friends, has never changed and will never change at all. This is the only knowledge which is definite and absolute. So whoever wants to say that he has knowledge, only that person in reality has the right of saying that he is knowledgeable and he has knowledge, is that person who has knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith. Because this is the only knowledge, dear friends, which is absolute, accurate and will never be changed at all. We won't be going to reverse gear with regards to anything that the Quran has mentioned to us. But rather we find today, after millions and millions of pounds are spent in research, people are finding the answers that they were looking for in black and white in the Quran itself. Things which we didn't have to pay anything at all. No money was spent at all, and we had it there in black and white, mentioned to us 1500 years ago, and today we find millions and millions are spent on the same very research. Now dear friends, after this same revelation of Iqra was revealed to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we find there was a great change amongst the Arabs. Because there are two things in a nation, that whichever nation possesses these two things, they will always be elevated, and these two things, once they are lost, a nation will not gain the honor and the elevation that they had before. These two things, dear friends, is ilm and akhlaq. Ilm by means of ta'aleem and akhlaq by means of tarbiyah. Ta'aleem and tarbiyah, the famous T and T. We can't be on the road without T and T, isn't it? In the same way, dear friends, we can't be on the road without ta'aleem and tarbiyah. These two things, dear friends, are those two things which change a nation. Once Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam inculcated ta'aleem and tarbiyah amongst the Sahaba, that's when the entire society, dear friends, changed. The people were the same, but morals changed, akhlaq changed, way of life changed, law changed. Every aspect of a person's life, dear friends, changed because of the means of these two things. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself mentions in another hadith that one of his missions is بُعِثْتُ لِيُتِمَّ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, I have been sent in order to reform the corrupted akhlaq character of the people. Elsewhere he says that إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا, that I was sent as a muallim, as a teacher. And he mentioned these ahadith, dear friends, these sayings of his after this revelation of Iqra. So when he was in solitude in the Mount of Hira, when this verse was revealed to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam with regards to Iqra, knowledge, from that day onwards, dear friends, a great transformation, but rather a great revolution occurred amongst the people of Arabia, nay, but the entire world today. And who was Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam? He was somebody who was illiterate. Now this is something so unique, that who causes such a great change amongst the people? A person who didn't see education at all. He didn't have the opportunity of being taught. He was illiterate. But the same illiterate individual, dear friends, became such an individual that centuries later, after his demise, even non-Muslims, the likes of William H. Hart, who has written the famous book 100 Great Personalities, in this book of his 100 Great Personalities, he has chosen Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to be first on his list. And when he writes regarding Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what does he say? He starts off by saying that many people will be surprised that I have chosen him to be number one on my list. But then he further writes that the reason why he chose Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to be one on his list is he says that he is the only person in the entire history who he has found who has excelled on both the religious and the secular scene. On both the religious and secular scene, only Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has excelled. Who has excelled? Somebody, dear friends, who didn't have a PhD. Never a PhD, he didn't even have his GCSEs. He didn't have the mere, just a minimum also of the secular education. He didn't have this, but this person writes that he excelled in both the religious, not that he was just the imam of the masjid and he excelled in the way he performed the salat, the bayan talks he gave, and the qiraat that he used to do, but he excelled in both fields, the religious and the secular field. And you find, dear friends, in the hadith of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he gives us so many advice with regards to secular aspects. Now coming back to knowledge. In the Quran too, dear friends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned a lot of different sciences. But He has mentioned them very vaguely. If you read the Quran, we find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of technology, of transport also. He mentions with regards to transport how He will create different types of transport which people won't know of. He mentions with regards the engineering of the palace of Sulaiman alayhi salam that he built for Bilqis. He mentions with regards to the engineering of the ark of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. He talks with regards to the intelligence of Hudhud when he went and he spied on Bilqis and came back and reported it to Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which was not leaked and nobody had any inquiries after it either. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of these type of things in the Quran. Various different forms of sciences and technology has been mentioned in the Quran. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mentions them very briefly. He mentions them but very briefly. But the other things with regards to Tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regards to Risalat, the prophethood of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and with regards to Akhirat, the hereafter, these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions from start to end over and over and over. In order to give us the lesson that from all the other sciences, the most important science is that of the Quran. Why? Because other sciences, dear friends, are there as a necessity. We need lawyers and we need doctors, but we need them as a necessity. Just the way a person has a toilet in the house, he doesn't live there in the toilet his whole life, he uses it as a necessity. He has mops and he has brooms in the home, but he uses them as a necessity when the need is there for him to do some cleaning. He doesn't make it the absolute thing that he needs for the home, it is utilized there as a necessity. In the same way, dear friends, all the other sciences are there as a necessity. That when a person becomes ill, he needs a doctor, not all the time, he doesn't live in doctor's surgery. Well, we become such that we do. But we need them as we need. In actual fact, we find that if any society boasts that they have the most doctors and the most lawyers, they're indicating towards the fact that they are the most ill, most sick nation and the most corrupt nation, because the more ill you are, the more doctors you need, the more criminals you have, the more lawyers you need. With due respect to them all. On one occasion, a doctor from Syria came and he settled in Madinatul Munawwara and he opened his GP. He opened his surgery in Madinatul Munawwara. He wasn't a Muslim, he was a Christian. Now he found that very few people would come and visit his surgery. So after some time, he came to Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and he complained to him. He thought that because he was a Christian, people know, the Muslims, the Sahaba, they don't want to go and visit him. So he came and he complained to Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that I have travelled from Syria, he have opened my surgery, and nobody wants to come and visit me in my surgery. What is the matter? Do they not like me? Is it because of my religion or what? Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied to him that no, it's got nothing at all to do with who you are. The fact is that alhamdulillah, the people of Medina are very healthy, so they don't need to visit the doctor. They're so healthy that they don't need to visit the doctor, that's why they don't visit you. So this doctor realized that this is a poor place, this is not the right place to be doing business, so he shut shop and he went back to Syria and he opened his business there again. So these type of sciences and fields, dear friends, are there out of mere necessity. But one form of knowledge which is not a necessity, it is something which is absolute. It is something that a person needs all the time in his life, and that is knowledge of the Quran and the Hadith. As we mentioned also the saying that from the cradle to the grave a person should seek knowledge, but in actual fact it goes beyond and before the cradle also. In the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ, He taught mankind that which he did not know. This teaching aspect, dear friends, already commences when a child is in the womb of his mother. Because when a mother gives birth to the child, she doesn't just put a bottle into the mouth of the child to suck on, but the mother, what does she do? She breastfeeds the child. When she breastfeeds the child, you find that the child automatically receives the milk and it automatically starts sucking on the mother. Tell me, did any teacher go into the womb of the child and mother to teach the child this? Did the child go to any kindergarten or any preschool to learn that once you are born and this is the way that you need to suck on the mother's breast? This wasn't taught to the child, but it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who granted the child this form of knowledge before it even came into this world. This is عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is already teaching mankind things which he did not know. And then the child, who taught the child that if it is in some pain or difficulty, that the child should cry, should make certain sounds which sounds like crying, so that the parent knows, the mother knows that there is something wrong with the child is attending to. Nobody taught the child this. The mother and the father didn't teach a child how to cry, but this is the knowledge which already starts when a person is in the womb of the mother. So the ta'aleem, dear friends, is such an integral part that it already commences from that moment. Now when a person is born and is already in this world, the first knowledge that mankind gives the child, is when the azan and the takbir is given in the ears. This is an everlasting knowledge that is imparted on the child. The first knowledge that is imparted on the child, dear friends, from any teacher in this world is the adhan in one ear and the takbir in the other ear. The teaching of Tawheed and Risalat. And thereafter the child grows up and his first madrassa is the laps of the mother. And thereafter, after it leaves the lap of the mother, then it goes into another mode, into another area of learning. And that learning, dear friends, whether it be the traditional alif bata, where a child goes to an apa, or the child goes to somebody's house and somebody sits with a few children and teach them the alif bata, or whether it is where children go to a more organized area which we call the maktab. The maktab, dear friends, which we call the primary madrassa. Yes, the same primary madrassa which is only 2.5 hours every day, Monday to Friday, Saturday, the 2.5 hours which we don't even feel a pinch from our pockets also. The cheap madrassa we're talking about. But this same cheap madrassa, dear friends, is so unique and so great that one madrassa cannot be sacrificed for over 1,000 universities. 1,000 universities can be sacrificed for one maktab. This is how unique the system of the maktab system is. Many parents today and those who are not associated with the maktab system do not have a clue how great the maktab system is. This, dear friends, if we take out the maktab system, we take out the rare bone of Islam. The backbone of Islam, dear friends, is the maktab. Without this, a person is totally paralyzed. If we take this out of our lives, and we find, dear friends, various schemes are already there in order for Muslims to lose this backbone of ours. By the means of homework clubs, by means of after-school activities. These activities, dear friends, are deliberately there so that our children lose this backbone, they lose out going to the maktab. And you find that our parents are such that they easily fall for this also, and they will readily send the children to these type of clubs, homework clubs, and after-school activities. Why? Because they want them to excel with regards to this world. Whereas what they don't realize is that these same very makatib, these centers of learning, dear friends, this is where the qabr, this is where the hereafter of the child and the parent takes place. This is the place wherein the child is taught that when the mother and the father is dying to read the kalima for them. This is the place where the child is taught that when your parents leave this world, you do some good for them, that it will benefit them in the hereafter. This is the place where their future is made. This isn't the place where they are taught how to become millionaires and how to become businessmen and doctors and lawyers, etc. But this is the place where they are taught how they can become Muslims, how they can die on Iman, dear friends. Irrelevant, when they grow up, they can become the most wealthiest of people, the greatest of scientists and engineers and doctors, whatever. But this is the place, dear friends, where the akhirat is being made. And our case is such that by us giving preferences to the other secular types of education over the madrasa system, dear friends, it is like a person gives a diamond for an ice cream. Who would give a diamond for an ice cream? Dear friends, the dunya is temporary, the hereafter is eternal. What we do is, we rather educate our children with regards to the temporary abode and not with regards to the eternal abode. We want to give preference to the temporary knowledge to that of the eternal knowledge, dear friends. So the makatib system is something that is greatly unique. It is something, dear friends, which a person now he's sowing the seeds for his future and for his hereafter. That's how important the makatib system is, dear friends. It works and it serves as a washing machine. An example normally is that of a washing machine, wherein a child goes to school for 6 to 7 hours a day, wherein its mind is polluted with the education, and it's also polluted with the environment. Now when I mentioned education, don't think that I'm anti-education, obviously. Nobody denies the fact that it's important that we are educated in all sciences. There's no debate in this at all. So don't get a misconception here. Yes, we need to educate ourselves, but educate ourselves with those things that are relevant for us, with those things which are beneficial for us. So the child is polluted already with the theories of Darwin, with the theories of Newton and Malthus who created fear amongst the people by mentioning that the population of mankind outgrew the production of food, wherein people now started fearing that now we're going to all starve because the population of mankind is increasing more than the production of food. So this is the types of theories that they get to learn. Now when they go to these schools, for these amount of hours, the minds become polluted, and the environment in the schools, dear friends, is also so evil and immoral. And I will say something personally. I also schooled in this country. When we went to school, it was a bit different. It was bad then. But I personally, in the position that I am now, not of any position, but I mean age-wise, etc., when I think with regards to small children who go to high school and those who go to universities and colleges in today's time, I personally feel that if I was also going, I do not know what would become of me. That's how immoral it is. Not just the education, but the environment of these places, dear friends, have become so corrupt and so immoral. So now when a child goes to these dens of vice, the child becomes filthy, the child becomes dirty and polluted. And now when he comes to the madrasa in the evening, dear friends, now it is that we are putting them in the washing machine. So now when they go home in the evening, they are clean and they are cleansed from all the filth and dirt that their minds were polluted with. And if we take out this system, dear friends, they will remain. Imagine a rag of cloth which is never washed at all. What would become of it? This would have become the same state of our children, dear friends, if we were to remove the maktab system that is there. The maktab system, dear friends, is something which we should not regard minute. It is unfortunate that we have to compromise with the school, that the schools are 6-7 hours and we only have 2.5 to 2 hours. This is something unfortunately we have to compromise. But dear friends, just because the hours are less, and just because you know that if the child is going to become a Hafiza of Quran, Alim Qari, he's not going to become a millionaire. Because of this, dear friends, we know that he's not going to qualify with some great diploma, PhD. Because of this, we regard it to be trivial. So, well, he'll go there, whatever somebody misses at home, at the madrasa, he'll just read it at home. There's no big deal if he misses madrasa. Whereas what we don't realize, dear friends, is that which he misses at madrasa is a great loss for that child. It is a great, immense loss for that child. The preference that we give to the schools is incorrect. Today, parents, especially the academy, we have a very stern principle at the madrasa that if a child misses school, if a child does not miss school and he misses madrasa, his punishment is more. Because we find that if there's any time that the parent will choose for when his appointments, etc. should be made, it is always madrasa time. No appointments are made during the school times. No visiting the uncles and the long lost far cousin is done during the school time. It is all done during the madrasa time. Why? Because the school is important, the madrasa isn't important. This is the mentality that we have. And on this, I always I get very stern on the children with regards to this aspect. And alhamdulillah, due to this, we find a lot of parents make sure that they rather now take appointments in the school time and then the madrasa time, because they know the Mufti Zubair will get very angry with the students. Why? Because in order to create a realization in the parents that the madrasa is just as important, but rather more important than that of the school. We rather sacrifice the school, but not sacrifice the madrasa, dear friends. So this madrasa system is something that is unique. The fruits of which, now normally what happens is parents, they'll come 5 o'clock, drop the child off, 7:30 they'll come pick the child up. They don't have a clue what goes on between the 2.5 hours in the madrasa. They don't have a clue at all. To that extent, alhamdulillah, you have some parents, mashallah, who will keep an eye on what the child is learning. Has the child learned the sabaq or not, whether he knows what he's doing. You'll have even those parents who don't even have a clue what the child is learning. Many times you have application forms also. You ask the parent, what does the child read, what is he currently reading? He won't have a clue. The father actually has to ask the child. One parent will ask him why the child is not coming to madrasa. The father asks the wife, oh, did he not go to madrasa today? He doesn't have a clue that whether the child went to madrasa or not. But he knows whether the child went to school or not. Because he knows that no, the child must go to school. Whatever happens, he has to go to school. He can't miss school. Why? Because you miss school, you get a fine also. You get the school people phoning you up. It's a pity that the madrasa system also, we don't have the same system. I've warned my students that very soon, inshallah, we'll also have a fine system. If you miss school, madrasa, for no reason, or you book your holidays to go to various countries during the madrasa time, you'll also get fined. And then we'll see how many students miss madrasa then. If the asatiza, also the principals, start phoning them, that look, it's been 1-2 days, your child hasn't come to madrasa, what's the problem? Then you find everybody will start sending them to madrasa. It's a pity that people think, and by nature, mashallah, the ulama are soft by nature and humble by nature, but I think we become a bit too humble also. A bit too humble, which the parents have taken advantage of. And this, dear friends, needs to be also remedied. Wherein if there's a sterner, and this sternness, dear friends, is not to prove who is right and who is wrong. It is there in order to get our priorities right. That where should our priorities be, dear friends? So our priorities should be with that center of learning, which is the first center that a child is enrolled in when a child is small. And in those 7, 8, 9 years that a child leaves the madrasa, dear friends, you can be guaranteed that that child who spends the entire time correctly in the madrasa, that child will die on iman, inshallah. Why? Because his backbone, his foundation, the foundation of the child has been firm and strong. It has been cemented and concreted so strong that in whatever environment the child then goes into, whatever the child intends to do in the hereafter, dear friends, it won't affect his iman. But if the child doesn't go to the madrasa, he doesn't have a clue with regards who Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is, with regards his beliefs, with regards to Tawheed and these type of masail, dear friends, then that child will become a lost case when he goes into the outside world. Because outside world, dear friends, as you know, is a vicious world. It is there with its claws all the way around. And specifically the claws are aimed at our young kids, dear friends. You will notice also in the school environment, many teachers, dear friends, they look at our child either with envy or they look at them out of dislike for our children. Why? Because, dear friends, they cannot comprehend and they cannot understand how a child, after spending 6-7 hours grilled in school, can then go home, wash, change his clothes and then go again to the madrasa for another 2-3 hours. Whereas the other children will be where? They'll be on the sports fields, they'll be there rehearsing for the pantomimes, they'll be there home or in the streets, they'll be going, dossing about, causing havoc in the streets. Whereas these same children, dear friends, in such beautiful clothing, they're going to the madrasa. In the academy, in the madrasa, we have a specific dress code where all the boys, the children wear full white. From head to toe, they wear full white. And this, dear friends, has a great effect on the environment. And I'll give you an example how. The children, 5 o'clock, well, they have to be in at 5 o'clock. So before 5, they leave their homes and they come to the madrasa. They come playing about, messing about with the grance, the folders in their hands, and they just come innocently to the madrasa. And then at 7 o'clock when they get to tea, they go straight from madrasa, they go home. They're not doing anything at all, they're just coming and going playing about. But the white clothing of theirs, small children from the age of 5, in Jabba, all white, topi, everything in white. But they're coming and going different every day is giving dawah to the people in the locality. da'wah to the Muslims and da'wah to the non-Muslims. The area of Western we know is predominantly of the other Aqidah. But then, to dear friends, these children just coming and going are pulling along so many other kids. Not with a flute, but just their simple dressing, dear friends, they are inviting and calling so many other kids. And not only that, so many of the non-Muslims in the area are also so impressed with the dressing of these children. Just across the madrasa, there is a house wherein a non-Muslim English couple live. Not long ago, the person there, he himself mentioned to me one day, wherein he himself said that these children that come at 5 o'clock, they're such a pleasure to look at. They look so nice and neat and tidy in the clothing, in the uniform. Even they knew that they have a uniform. And he himself said that they look so nice. And on one occasion, a few children came about 4:30. And the lady across the road, she was saying to them that, aren't you early today? She said to them, aren't you early today? Your classes start at 5 o'clock. So even they notice when the classes start and when the classes finish. And we also have quite a few students from Huddersfield that come, and they come in a Pacific Blue minibus. So they even recognize that, notice that, and they even ask that, where does the minibus come from? So dear friends, this the kids, they're just playing about. In their childhood, just coming and going to the madrasa, they're giving da'wah to so many people. There's been occasions, dear friends, where I've actually been in a car at the Pelican crossing. And crossing the road are small children who are going to madrasa with the Qurans in it. And if you directly look at the cars across you, the non-Muslims, and you find everyone is just gazing and looking at those small children. Gazing at them at awe and gazing at them astonished. That look at these beautiful children who, instead of them messing about and graffitiing on the streets, they've got the Quran in their hands with such great respect. It's not on the floor, it's not in the bags, it's there up by the chest. And dressed in such a beautiful form, they are going somewhere, they are going to the centers of learning. That's how much effect this madrasa system has, not only on the child himself, but also on those around a person. So we should not regard these 2.5 hours, dear friends, to be something trivial. Now, as I was mentioning, the parents just come, drop the children off, and they go away. But they don't realize the amount of strain and the effort that takes place in those 2.5 hours, dear friends. Because though the strain that takes place there on the asatiza is mental strain. It isn't physical strain, but it's mental strain. And mental strain has a more effect on a person than physical. And the example I've given a few times is, when I was studying in Azhar in South Africa, there was a student who started a madrasa from Cape Town. And prior to starting the madrasa, he used to work in the mines. He used to work in the mines, and we all know how difficult it is working in the mines. He himself, when it used to be lunchtime, 12 o'clock lunchtime after 4 hours classes, he himself would say that he feels more hungry after 4 hours in a classroom than 4 hours in a mine. Because there it was just physical work, and here it is mental strain. The asatiza, dear friends, what do we think? We think that these are the same people who couldn't make a career out of anything else, so then they thought there's no career at all, we have to earn some living, so now let's go to madrasa and we start teaching. This is what we think of them. Dear friends, the same asatiza in the madrasa, if they wanted to, they could also be out there, they could also be there making and earning their billions. But they aren't doing so. Why? Because they are doing their akhirat, and they are the ones who are making the akhirat of our children, dear friends. The statuses that the asatiza have, dear friends, nobody else at all has the statuses that the asatiza have, because, dear friends, they are not making the dunya of the children, but rather they're making both the dunya and the hereafter of that child, dear friends. When that one ustad passes away, dear friends, imagine how much he'll accumulate in his deeds. Because when he teaches verse 1, as Shibai mentioned earlier on, with regards to children in the madrasa, and the other, those who started off in the madrasa, now they themselves have become teachers themselves. So imagine how much reward their teachers are getting, how much reward they're getting, how much their students will get, and so on. It is a continuous thing wherein they're going to get so much reward that is there. It is something of great responsibility. Great responsibility lies on the shoulders of the asatiza, and alhamdulillah, with great effort, they're implementing this great responsibility of theirs. It is something that we should really appreciate. There is no price. The mere wages that they get, dear friends, is just something which is just part of this work. But in reality, no figure at all. Today we talk about figures, isn't it? Sign new contracts and we're going to the 40, 50, 60,000, isn't it? Dear friends, if you were to put a figure on the asatiza at the end of the week, how much they give, dear friends, no one can purchase them. No one can purchase them. We have to break all the world's records and banks and everything in order to be able to pay the reward of an ustad who teaches the children what? He teaches the children what his dunya is and what his akhirat is. So dear friends, we should not regard this to be something that is trivial. This is, dear friends, where the akhirat of the child takes place. Now a person, when he goes through that phase, because now the topic is also how a person can acquire knowledge. Now when a person goes through this phase, and now he leaves madrasa, he has a strong backbone there. Now if somebody may say, but in our times, we were unfortunate, we didn't have the opportunity wherein we could learn. So for them also comes the saying again, from cradle to grave. Learning doesn't stop. It doesn't mean that now once you're children in your youth, then only you should be learning. But learning, dear friends, is something that carries on till a person dies. So if you feel that you didn't get the opportunity when you were a child, when you were younger, the opportunities are still there when you are in your middle age, to that extent even when you become old. Because today, alhamdulillah, we have so many venues, so many avenues wherein knowledge is propagated to the people. These type of programs, and besides we have so many adult classes nowadays that take place, wherein people can go and educate themselves, although they didn't have the opportunity when they were young. Today we make an excuse that in our times we were not taught properly. For example, in the madrasa, in the school holidays, the children are told that they should read namaz at the masjid. Now, obviously at their homes the parents don't read. So one child mentioned to me that he told his father that he should also read salat. He told his own father that he should also read namaz. The fathers gave him the excuse that, look, you're lucky you go to madrasa. When we were small, we couldn't go to madrasa. So he made that as an excuse. He doesn't read namaz. Why? Because he didn't go to madrasa when he was small. So what answer did he give? So now my Mufti Zubair has over 16 classes also. We have over 16 classes also. So he wiped off that excuse of the father. So nowadays, alhamdulillah, we have such type of classes for the adults. So when a person is in his adult age also, he can still go and accumulate so much forms of knowledge, dear friends. To that extent, when it comes to other knowledges, you even find old age pensioners applying for various different forms of courses, even those who we normally call anguta chap, those who can't even sign their name. Today they are also learning I.T.A and they are also learning English and so many other languages. Even they, mashallah, have found themselves going to colleges. Those who couldn't write their names, their friends, even they are enrolling themselves in colleges. No matter how old they've become, one is, when it comes to knowledge of deen, we don't have the time. When it comes to knowledge of deen, we say, well, out of date now. We say that nothing goes into the head. India, Pakistan, then we'll see how much magaj motre, isn't it? For things that suits us, everything goes into the head. Things that don't suit us, nothing goes into the head. Nothing goes into the head. It's gone. We're out of date now. Our minds are closed, signed and sealed. Whereas, the same type of people will get the time. Normally we complain that we're very busy, we can't find time for anything else. But yes, we can find time for the odd part-time classes in the evenings, in the universities and the colleges. There we find time. Even our mother folks, dear friends, who didn't get the opportunity to learn anything when they were young, they also are the same, they can't sign their own names, but they get the time for what? To go to classes where they can learn how to put media in their hands. How constructive is that for a person? For those type of futile things, they get the time to educate themselves, but when it comes to educating themselves with regards to knowledge of deen, they can't find any time for that at all. So when a person is in his adult age also, till he becomes old, he finds that his tajweed is poor, he should attend tajweed classes. He knows his salat is poor, he doesn't know the basic masail of salat, then he should go to such classes where these type of things are taught. Daily before the Jummah you have programs also, during the week you have various different programs also, you have adult classes that take place also, in the month of Ramadan also you have special classes every weekend that takes place. We should take advantage of all these classes that are available for us. Previously, yes, we will admit that these type of things were not available for us, but now that these things have become available for us, we should make the most of it. And not only that, dear friends, alhamdulillah, in the month of Ramadan, every weekend we have programs here. Those programs are of current affairs programs. But more than that also, our stage is such, dear friends, I can guarantee you that most of us are even unaware of the basic essentials of deen. In the month of Ramadan at the academy, we had Quran tafsir one day, hadith one day, and fiqh third day. In the fiqh masail, dear friends, all the masail on zakat, interest, banking, these things, we left that for the masjid here. Encourage everybody come here for those programs. On the program days, we had fiqh in that. Do you know what was taught? The farais of ghusl, the farais of salat, the wajibat of salat. Why, dear friends? Because I can guarantee to you, without this insulting anybody, but if we were to give a questionnaire out to everybody sitting here, and everybody was to write how many farais days of ghusl and farais of salat, I can guarantee you more than half will not be able to answer these questions, although we may be punched 5 times salat, jamaat, so we did our 5 times salat with jamaat, but we are even unaware of the basics, essentials of deen. That's how ignorant we have become with regards to knowledge of deen. And when we don't even know so much, we don't want to educate ourselves either. And then what do we want to do? Our Sunday afternoon talks, we meet up with the other members of the family, and then each one becomes a great mufti there. He doesn't know the farais of ghusl, but then each one becomes a mufti. According to me, I think this type of mortgage should be halal, this type of interest is okay, this should be okay. What's wrong with these ulama? Why can't they see this is the do, this is this and that? Each person becomes a big mufti today. He doesn't know the basic essentials of deen, and now each one becomes a so-called homemade scholar. The fact that the Bukhari and these things are in English and you just read those, today you have these homemade, which are called homemade scholars. And today it's become very easy for a person to become a homemade scholar. You don't have to do anything. We want everything online nowadays, isn't it? We do everything online, we become muftis online. We just sit there, we just go into search engines, search any site that we want. We want to know about zakat, just search zakat and we've got it there. And we all then become homemade scholars, and we are taught by homemade people. There's one website which I went on to, and they had a question and answer session. The questions were really intriguing, good questions. And then when I went to the answer page, I found they were all answered by who? Sister so-and-so. The mufti was sister somebody, whatever her name was. So the questions, all the masail, intriguing masail, were answered by sister so-and-so. And these are the people that we learn knowledge from. This is amazing. We don't want to learn knowledge, and when we do learn knowledge also, we learn knowledge from such type of people, dear friends, who themselves don't know from head to tails rather than know tails to head. They don't know anything themselves, and these are the types of people that we want to educate ourselves from. So dear friends, the internet is there, it's a good tool, but don't just go there and search anything also, go to the ulama. This is where the ulama's duty comes into effect, where the ulama, dear friends, should be your search engine. They're the ones, you have your different search engines, you have your different ulama, you have your qaris, you have your, with regards to the field of qiraat, you want to know, just search anything of qiraat from them. You have the muftis, ask them with regards to searching of fatwa, masail, etc. You have the ulama kiram, just go to them and search them rather. And also it means that ulama should also be up to it, so that they should also be able to answer the queries of the people. Previously when I used to live in South Town, from my house to the masjid, whenever I used to go on the way and coming, people used to ask various questions that they want to know. Now and then what would happen is they would say also, people are also gullible, that there will be masla, and they will say also, we went to Maulana so and so, and Maulana gave to Mufti Sahib na pucho. It's a question that you have to ask Mufti Sahib. And you wonder, it must be something really important or so. And then when they ask you the question, it is something so simple and basic to find in any English book also. We said, look, easy way to get out, isn't it? Mufti Sahib na kaha, ask Mufti Sahib himself. So the ulama shouldn't be such also, they should be there to make themselves available also. Because, dear friends, today, if you're going to tell the people don't search such sites, then the ulama have to also be there available for the people, where the people can communicate with them. Unfortunately, we have a great gap between the ulama and the masses. We need to build a bridge between the masses and the ulama, wherein the ulama should be open, that the masses can come towards, and the masses should be there that they go to the ulama also. Now that the ulama close themselves and the awam stay away also, that they don't want to go to the ulama, they should come to the ulama, and the ulama should make themselves available to them. In this way, they will be benefiting themselves, and also they will be able to benefit the masses around them. On one occasion, this reminds me of an incident. On one occasion, my beloved Sheikh, Hazrat Shakim Muhammad Akhtar Sahib Dawud Barakatuhu, was traveling with his Sheikh, Shah Abrahul Haq Dawud Barakatuhu. They were traveling in one car. Imagine how much nur would have engulfed the entire car. Two great personalities traveling in one vehicle. And they were traveling from Jeddah to Makkah to Mukarramah. On the way, they stopped at a petrol station to fill up some petrol. Whilst they were there at the petrol station, another oil tanker came and stopped at the petrol station, and the driver got out of the petrol tanker and he started filling petrol into the lorry. Shah Abraham Sabdam Barakatuhu, on seeing this mentioned, they just look at this tanker. It has gallons and gallons of petrol on it. But the petrol that is there is of no use to anybody else, and neither is it of any use to the tanker itself, to the lorry itself. If somebody runs out of petrol, you can't just flag down a shell lorry and just fill up some petrol for me. So it can't benefit anybody at all. And neither can it benefit itself. It has gallons of petrol on top of it, but it still has to go to the petrol station to fill up petrol. So it has all the petrol on its back, but it is of no use to itself and no use to anybody else. On this he says the same is with those ulama who have knowledge who do not benefit themselves and do not benefit other people from it. So we too shouldn't become like those oil tankers where we have the knowledge, we're not benefiting from it, and neither do we make benefit, we do benefit other people from it. We should be there in order to educate the masses, dear friends. And with regards to women folk, for them also it's so easy, dear friends. By means of this ni'mat of the receiver system, what have we done? We've cut out the middleman. We've cut out the middleman. Before it used to be where the men folk come to the masjid, they learn from the asatidha, they learn from the talks, etc. Then they go home and then they relay everything to the women folk at home. But when the men folk became so weak, and then technology improved and we realized, look, cut out the middleman. So now, alhamdulillah, we go direct to the homes. Knowledge is taken direct to the homes. They don't have to go anywhere at all. Knowledge is there in the doorsteps, not inside the households, not even on the doorsteps. That's how much easy it has become for them also. So they also have no excuse at all. And if they want to educate themselves more, what more can they be than that of base disabled? This which is a great ni'mat of Hakim al-Matawi rahimahullah, that any female who just studies the base disabled properly, that is more than enough for her. She doesn't need to study more than that, that is more sufficient for her. And in this locality also, this various programs, Manana Abdul Rauf Sahab also has his various programs, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Tuesdays specifically for the women folk also. So there's no excuse for the women folk also that they have nowhere to go in order to learn and educate themselves. So I even encourage them to take out the time, just the way you can take out time for henna parties and other forms of parties and that, other forms of things, art and that. You can also take out time in order to educate and learn yourself and educate yourselves with regards to this. So dear friends, the crux is the knowledge of deen is the only knowledge which is absolute. There is no other knowledge which is absolute and perfect as the knowledge of deen. When this is the knowledge of the Quran and Hadith, the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there can be no individual greater than that person who imparts the knowledge of Allah. There can be no building greater than that building in which this is imparted. On one occasion, Nabi Kareem said to the Sahaba, إِذَا مَرَرْتُمْ بِرِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ فَرَتَوْا بِهَا, that when you pass by the gardens of Jannah, then sit there and have a picnic there. Meaning sit there and benefit from it. You see a nice green spot somewhere, what do you feel like? You feel like going there, sitting there and making most of it. So he said to the Sahaba, when you pass by the gardens of Jannah, then sit there. The Sahaba wondered, that in this world, where are the gardens of Jannah? So they asked Nabi Karim, what do you mean by the gardens of Jannah in this world? No botanical gardens, etc. The gardens of Jannah, Nabi Karim said that the gardens of Jannah is majalisul ilm. Those gatherings of knowledge is what? The gatherings of knowledge, Nabi Karim termed as being the gardens of Jannah, dear friends. So when you drop your child off at 5 o'clock, that child is not going to any excursion anywhere, is not going to any farm to see the animals there, it isn't going to any theme park, etc. Your child is going in the gardens of Jannah. There can't be anywhere better to send your children, dear friends, to the gardens of Jannah. And also when you go and partake in the lessons, like now also we are sitting in the gardens of Jannah, dear friends. Free entry also. There's no admission fee when you enter into the masjid also. We are all sitting here and enjoying. And we are all in the majalis of ilm. The gatherings of ilm, and this has been termed as the gardens of Jannah, dear friends. So the knowledge of deen is something that is great. we should not deprive ourselves of this, dear friends. We should all make the effort, no matter what age group we are in. Things are available for us in every group that we are in. Every age group, alhamdulillah, there is something or the other available there for us. So we need to educate ourselves, make the most of whatever is there offered for us, and also at the same time, dear friends, do not be critical of those people who are offering you these services. Today we become so critical. If anything happens to a child in school, we don't bother about it. Yes, the teacher has the full rights to reprimand the child, to give the child detention or anything or the other. But if the asatidh in the madrasa reprimands the child, or if they give a detention in the madrasa also, and before you know, the mother, the father, the whole family is there with the sleeves up against the asatidh. Is this the way that the asatidh should be treated? Is this the respect and honor that we have for those people who are making the akhirat of your children? This, dear friends, shouldn't be the case at all. We should have utmost respect for those who are imparting the knowledge itself also. And if we have respect, and if we have some concern with regards to our own children, then very happily we will send them to the asatidh, we will send them to such madrasas, and we will support them. If we can't do anything ourselves, we can't teach them ourselves, then we will support the people who are teaching them, and we will also support the places where this takes place. As mentioned earlier on, we don't see the foundation, we don't see the effort that is taking place, we don't see the sleepless nights. Ask me how many nights I dream of the students in the madrasa. And obviously, if you are the mu'tamin, the principal, and just your limited 25 students, is the whole madrasa, every child in the madrasa, each one's worry and concern is on your head, whether he's learning properly or not, why he's not attending, what's his problem, everything. All this the asatidh have to undertake, dear friends. They don't just come there and joyfully pass the time, 2.5 hours, and go home, dear friends. They take a lot of stress. In the same way, those who are involved in the running of the madrasas, the committees of the madrasas, they also are doing great work, dear friends, wherein they are giving these type of facilities, wherein all we have to do is just drop the children off and pick the children off. All the responsibility has been taken off our heads. So dear friends, when all these type of services are available for us, we should make the most of it, dear friends. There is no excuse at all. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the knowledge of deen, and not only just grant us the knowledge of deen, but also create the importance of the knowledge of deen in our hearts also. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا اللهم صل على من اسحاق الوجيه من جميع افعال الافعال تقضينا من جميع الحاجات وتوحنا بها من جميع السيئات وتدخلنا بها بعد الدرجات وتبلغنا بها صلوات من جميع الخيرات في الاخره بارك الله انك لا تشقدير ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمه انك انت الوهاب ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا واخطانا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا اسما كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقه لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا وانت لا تنصرنا على القوم الكافرين ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم ربنا إننا سمعنا منادي ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بكم فآمنا ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار اللهم إنا نسألك من كل خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من كل شر ما استعاذ منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان عليك ولا حول